Hey everybody, thanks for joining us this week on the Extra Point Show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Got a big week. A Black Monday around the NFL was upon us with 6 teams firing their head coaches. Some somewhat surprising and some not at all. We have the Giants and the Texans would follow up and fire their coaches later in the week, joining the Dolphins, Raiders, Bears, Jaguars, Vikings, and Broncos as teams currently looking for a head coach.
Right. So that's 8 out of 32 teams right now that are currently looking to get new head coaches right now. So yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel like that number is higher. It certainly could have been more. Obviously, a lot of coaches that had poor records were first year head coaches like Robert Salah with the Jets
Urban
going.
Meyer.
Well, Urban Meyer got fired. Robert Salah didn't, so obviously Robert Salah is getting an additional year. But yeah, we'll go through
Right.
the list here, the Black Monday casualties here, and see who they got. Okay, so first and foremost, this was way earlier in the season. I know we reported on it, but John Gruden, who resigned.
Yeah. You always got resigned because
John Gruden resigned by the NFL. Or the NFL made John Gruden resign.
yeah, made him resign. So what do you call that, really? Like,
Yeah,
he got
yeah.
fired, but yeah.
So after 3-2 start for the Las Vegas Raiders, after reports surfaced that he had used racist, homophobic, and misogynistic language in emails. And at that point, the Raiders would make the decision to have Rich Bisaccia, their special teams coach, take over, which, again, definitely reported on an earlier episode. And Rich Bisaccia, as the interim coach, has done something that a lot of people, wouldn't have expected.
No, I'd say the Raiders altogether. The way the season's turned out, nobody expected them to make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
That's
I mean,
extreme.
there's a list I saw. The Henry Ruggs issue, John Gruden getting fired. There's
David
a whole
Arnett.
bunch of David Arnett. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different things that happened that it's not a team you would have expected to actually make it, and they did. So
The team's been kicked in the ass a lot of
yeah,
times.
definitely,
Like
definitely. A lot like Washington has,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean, they've had some, Montez Sweat's brother was killed, and then
DeShazer.
Shazer Everett was
Yeah.
in that the car accident where his girlfriend was killed. So there's some similarities there. So, to see a team that's dealt with a lot of adversity make it. I've never really liked the Raiders that much. I like Derek Carr. I appreciate him as a quarterback.
Sure.
But still, given the similarities there, it's nice to see.
It's impressive to, like, regardless of whether you're a Raiders fan or not, you got to take your hat off to him. I mean, Rich
Exactly.
Bisaccia leading a 7-5 record down the stretch, and getting a playoff appearance, and it literally in a, and we're gonna cover this when we go through the games, but in a win and you're in situation where it was gonna be them or the Chargers,
Mm-hmm.
the winning team getting in. So I mean, definitely definitely surprising. So yeah, I mean, Gruden was fired 5 games into his 4th season of that 10-year record $100 million contract that he signed with the Raiders. It's a lot of money. They uh, they backed the old Brinks truck up to John Gruden's home, just dumped it in there.
Just
John,
let me just dump all this. I wonder how much he actually got after
I don't
his
know,
firing.
because I know
I
there
don't
was
think that's
there was
been
a settlement.
disclosed,
Yeah,
but
I
there
don't.
had to have been some kind of I'm sure it was a large settlement, but I'm
Right.
curious what that actual, maybe, what, 30 million, 40
Well,
million,
well,
like
Mark Davis,
pay him 10
yeah,
to 10 mil a year, like it would,
yeah.
you would think maybe, but
Well, Mark Davis likes Al or uh, Al was Mark Davis's dad, Al Davis. But yeah, so Mark
mm,
Davis likes John Gruden. So I would assume that he's probably gonna, hook John up fairly well. This isn't like a Jacksonville situation where they're gonna try to avoid paying him all of his remainders. Like, I feel like
right,
Mark Davis really feels like the Raiders were pressured into this situation. He didn't want to get rid
right.
of John Gruden. I mean, but
Yeah, I would agree. I would
yeah.
agree.
But this could be a huge opportunity for Rich Bisaccia because he could end up getting the full-time job. I mean, he's certainly earned it.
He could, but I would say, at least in my memory, most of the time interim head coaches do not earn a
No,
head coaching job.
most of the time they don't. Most
Yeah,
of the time they
almost
do not.
always they do not. It's usually their interim, and then that's it.
I can
I
think
can't
of,
remember, what was it. Bill Callahan, was that Washington's recent interim head coach?
yeah,
Was that his
yep,
name? I
yep,
believe it was. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I can think of, excuse me, what was his name? With Jacksonville, Doug Marrone was the offensive assistant, and then he became the interim head coach, and then he actually ended up earning the job, but he got fired a couple seasons later. So, yeah, back to the drawing
Well,
board.
it's Jacksonville. I mean,
Yeah,
ugh.
yeah.
I mean,
Always, always.
unless you're Bill Belichick, you're gonna have a hard time. And even then, he's gonna
Yeah,
walk in there and be like, "What the fuck is this shit?"
yeah. That's probably true. So yeah, um, Gruden was like I said, the Raiders were 3-2. He had amassed in his second stint a 22-31 record with the Raiders. Previously, when he coached them from '98 to 2001, he was 38-26 as the Raiders head coach. So definitely had a much more successful first stint than his second time around.
Yeah.
Second firing to report on was the Vikings getting rid of Mike Zimmer, who had been their coach for, I think it was going on 8 seasons.
Yeah, I think it was 8. Yeah, that's somewhat surprising. I mean, the Vikings, they didn't have a terrible season, but I mean, when you think, I guess they did have their consecutive sub under 500 season for the first time since he was hired in 2014. So he had it was seventh longest coaching tenure among the NFL's 32 clubs, and went
Yep.
72, 56-1 in Minnesota.
Yeah. 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 And then Minnesota did an entire house cleaning, and they also got rid of Rick Spielman, the GM, who has been in office. He's actually Chris Spielman, former Detroit uh, Lions linebacker and Fox analyst, Chris Spielman's brother.
Oh,
But
okay.
he's
I
yeah
did.
he's been the general manager in Minnesota since 2012, and so their best season together between Zimmer and Spielman was 2017 when the Vikings went 13-3 and made the NFC Championship game.
How the mighty have fallen. I mean, I guess somewhat. I mean, it's only NFC Championship game, but
You know what's
you
weird
know.
about that is that was a game that was led by Case Keenum, and then the next year they
Ah.
got Kirk Cousins, and they actually
That's an upgrade, but it's a very minor upgrade.
and then they've been around 500 ever since. So it's like it obviously
That is odd.
maybe they
That
should
is
have
odd.
stuck
They
with
should just stuck with Case.
Case
That's
Keenum.
weird because Kirk Cousins on paper is a much better quarterback than Case Keenum. So
Why not Case Keenum?
that's really, really
Why
strange.
not
That's
Case Keenum?
odd.
So
Man,
Zimmer,
and both of them have been in Washington and
yeah,
didn't help us. So I don't know.
yeah. So Zimmer,
Uh,
who's a longtime defensive assistant, before taking the Vikings job, he was um, he was the defensive coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys.
and the next head coach to be fired this season, Brian Flores of the Miami Dolphins. Initially, when I heard about this one, I was surprised.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, one day after they beat the Patriots to finish the season 9-8, it marked his second consecutive winning season in Miami. They were 10-6 in 2020, so they did drop a bit. But a winning record's a winning record. You really
Yeah,
can't complain too much about that. They did not make the playoffs, unfortunately for them. In Flores' 3 years as a head coach, he went 24-25 in Miami,
yep,
so a fairly average overall record. After a 1-7 start, the Dolphins would win 7 straight somehow before a blowout Week 17 loss to the Titans ended their playoff hopes. And one other thing, when initially, like I said, I thought this was kind of surprising, but then reading some stuff after the fact about the way things
yeah,
were with the team and the way that he apparently behaved with players, and a lot of players, it said some players respected him and liked him, and some just really didn't. It didn't seem like they had a good thing going on there. So I think it was a lot more than, maybe they had a decent record, but there was other things going on in there that
yeah.
just didn't make it work.
Yeah, apparently his relationship, from what I've heard with Tua, was really strained, and they had a couple of like blow up situations where they were, where Flores was dropping like f bombs at Tua and telling him that he like fucking needs to play better and all
Oh
that.
yeah,
So
that's never good.
yeah, so I mean, I guess he was like kind of like abusive to Tua or whatever, and but yeah, I mean, like you said, some players definitely went to bat for him. So I wonder, like if maybe that was players on the defensive side of the ball since he's a defensive oriented guy or what.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's just there's a limit to that, or a certain decorum in the NFL. Like, there's the one thing getting guys pumped up, but like, if it's the point of degrading them and just cussing them out, it's like, well,
Yeah.
you know,
And I mean, Tua's young at this point. He's only in his second season,
yeah,
so it's
exactly.
like
You
you're
can't be
gonna
doing that with maybe if it's like a 33-year-old vet who
you're
loves it.
gonna
It's like,
you're
all
gonna
right,
break a
maybe
young
go
man's
for it, but
psyche, before it even
yeah.
starts. But yeah,
So he probably got himself fired, because of his behavior, not necessarily his record on the field.
it's a power struggle. It's a power struggle down there in Miami,
Yeah.
and they decided to go with Tua. Tua's the future, so they're going with that.
Yep. Hopefully it works for them. I
Yeah,
mean,
hopefully.
maybe he'll develop better, get better and better, but
Yeah, yeah,
they have done decent the last 2 years. So
yeah, yeah. This
they,
one,
they
go ahead.
I was just say they should stick with him given the record that they've had, the records they've had in the last 2 years. They may as well.
I would have thought so. I mean, it kind of seems to me like maybe a Jim Caldwell situation in Detroit. I know I've mentioned that before, where he went 9-7 in back-to-back years, and Detroit fired him, and then they hired Matt Patricia, and then they've since hired Dan Campbell, who I
Right,
like Dan
right.
Campbell, but it's just like
I like him
he's
as
he's
well.
obviously he's got a lot of work to do to rebuild things there in Detroit, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about Flores too is he's already being interviewed for the Giants job, which that leads us in. That's a good segue into our next one.
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely. One of my favorite firings of this
yeah.
season,
This one wasn't
Joe
surprising.
Judge.
I was actually more surprised initially when reports came out like 2 or 3 days before the last game of the season against Washington that
Hmm.
they were going to retain him. I was like, well, what the hell for? I was like,
Yeah.
why would you do that? I was like, he's four and
Dude,
12.
and he made those comments about like
Yeah,
I think he said Washington was a garbage team or
he's
something along those lines.
no he
What
well
did he say?
so he said basically. Hold on,
Yeah,
let
it's like
me.
maybe just find the. I know he said something that was just really, dude, like
Yeah,
really. And then
well
he gets
he
blown
tried to
out by
yeah
Washington by
he tried to
22-7.
yeah he tried to pass it off like he wasn't talking about Washington specifically. Let
Oh
me
yeah,
see.
right, right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, report on Joe Judge's fucking incompetence while I'm fucking looking up this.
But yeah, they finished with a 4-13 record that concluded with 6 straight losses. New York went 10-23 in Judge's 2 seasons and has not made the playoffs since 2016. None of the Giants' past 3 coaching tenures have exceeded 2 years. We got Ben McAdoo 2016-17, Pat Shermer from 2018-19, and then obviously Joe Judge. The team had previously fired offensive coordinator Jason Garrett on November 23rd after opening the season 3-7. Judge hired Garrett ahead of the 2020 season to serve as his first offensive coordinator in New York. Garrett had previously went 85-67, pretty good record, in more than 9 seasons as head coach of the Cowboys.
Yeah, yeah. So here's the Joe Judge quote. So basically, and I quote: "This ain't a team that's having fistfights on the sidelines. This ain't some clown show organization or something else, okay?"
Who else could that be other than
Yeah,
Washington?
exactly. And then he said it
Wow.
was more like a general statement, like, because they asked him, they're like, "Do you mean like Washington?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "I just mean in general." He's like,
Oh
"That's
yeah, no, that's our next game, but no, that's not what I'm talking about at all,
yeah,
man. I'm just talking generally. What a piece of shit. I'm glad he got fired. I mean, I already
yeah,
am because if the
yeah,
Giants do bad, but honestly, at this point, it doesn't even matter with the Cowboys and
yeah."
even the Eagles.
This is what Ron said. So Ron's response was, "Well,
Wait,
it's
Ron's response.
yeah." So Ron, because they asked Ron what he thought about Joe
Oh,
Judge's comment,
that's
and then
right.
yeah, and then he was like, "Well, it's interesting. It is," Rivera said Wednesday. "And I'm not going to respond to something that's interesting, but what's important is we play on Sunday. And I've got a tremendous amount of respect for the Giants organization. The Mars
Really, that's what he said.
and the Tishes are quality people and do a great job with their organization. As far as I'm concerned, we play on Sunday." So Ron kept it super professional and just went out there and beat the shit out of the Giants
Yeah, I
on
mean, I
Sunday
guess
with
that's what
his
matters
play.
is that score.
But
So
but
that is what
but
matters.
then they asked him let me see if it's here. Okay, hold on. let me. I've got a little bit more to the Judge quote, and then I'll reference kind of what like because Ron said something later on in the week. But yeah, so this is more of
Okay.
the Joe Judge quote. So they asked him if that was a dig at Washington, and then he backtracked and he's like, "No, I just made a comment towards any outward dysfunction. My focus is on getting our team ready right now for Washington. You can make it a lot. You can make a lot of the comments I've said in the past. Right now, I'm focused on getting the team ready for Washington this weekend."
Yeah, that just sounds funny. Him saying, it's not about Washington, but we're just focused on getting ready for Washington." So it's like,
Yeah.
come on, man.
And then
Really?
yeah, and then later in the week, I guess Ron had like came out and said something that he's like, after I thought about it, it actually did bother me because he's like Joe Judge doesn't really know what's going on in our house or whatever. Like obviously with the Montez Sweat situation and like the Deshaver Everett situation. So he's like, for him to say that is like,
Yeah.
pretty. So obviously it did piss Ron off after he thought about it more. So
I'm sure it did initially too, but he was
yeah,
like,
he was just acting. He was just taking the high road.
yeah, do what he has to do.
Yeah. All right. So Joe Judge is out. Obviously, I would be shocked to see him get another head coaching job. Jason Garrett is out as well, as we mentioned. The interesting thing about Jason Garrett is the Giants' offense was averaging 18 points a game with Jason Garrett, and 9 points after. So after they fired the offensive coordinator, the offense got worse. Go figure.
9 points.
Yeah.
Oof.
Shocked that happened.
That's rough.
But yeah, it was a rough week for the Belichick coaching tree because both Flores and Joe Judge are former Bill Belichick assistants. Which honestly, most Bill Belichick assistants end up making garbage head coaches. It's really just a situation where, and I think I've said this before. It's like he'll show them, or
he withheld the knowledge from them.
No, so
the
so
true
it's like
knowledge.
yeah. So it's like one of those situations where it's like he showed them everything they know, but he definitely didn't teach them everything he knows.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Belichick's like Belichick.
Belichunk.
Yeah. Belichick is like he's the emperor, man. He's fucking Palpatine. Like,
right.
yeah. Anyway, who else we got fired? Matt. No.
We got Vic Fangio of the Broncos.
Yeah. Not a surprise there. Vic,
yeah. Especially after that loss to the Chiefs to end their season at 7-10. He lasted 3 seasons as the Broncos head coach and finished his tenure with a 19-30 record. So, not a particularly surprising firing.
Not as bad
Interesting
as some of those
fact.
guys on there. Not as
True.
bad as Joe Judge's record.
But interesting fact about him, he was previously a defensive coordinator for the Bears, the 49ers, the Texans, the Colts, and the Panthers.
Yeah, so. He was the defensive coordinator when we went to the Super Bowl in 2013 for us. So the last time we were really good before the Kyle run, he was our DC. So then he went to the Bears from there.
Maybe he should stick to being a DC because apparently it didn't work out too well in Denver.
Vic will get brought back as a DC. I mean, he's like 60-something years old. He's been a long-time defensive assistant. I mean, he's earned the opportunity to get another job. I mean, he waited a long time to be a head coach. Obviously, it didn't work out. But basically, interesting about the Broncos, they finished 3rd in total defense and missed the playoffs, which is like I know we've mentioned this.
That's like unheard of.
Like the last time that happened was the '93 Bears, that a team finished in the top 5 total defense and missed the playoffs. Usually, if your defense is that good, you're like automatically in. Which the Niners have a top 4 ranked defense, and where are we?
In the playoffs.
That's true, bud. That's where you end up if you have a top ranked, except the Bears, or the Broncos. I mean, we'll get to the Bears. They're inept too. But
we got 2 inept teams coming up next.
We got more. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
So Vic will get another DC spot. I mean, he's earned that. He's a good defensive mind. He just couldn't get anything going with the offense. He was plagued with Drew Lock 4 last season, and then they got Teddy Bridgewater, and Teddy started like 13 games, then he got a concussion, which ended
Yeah.
his season. So they ended up going back to Drew Lock, and I don't think either of those guys is the long-term answer. But
No, definitely not. So they yeah, not that surprising. As is the next one we have, the
Yep.
Texans head coach David Culley.
yeah,
When they finished 4-13 after losing to the Titans to finish out the season, not very surprising. Culley lasted just one season as the Texans head coach after replacing the fired Bill O'Brien in late January of 2021.
I was kind of surprised by the David Culley hiring, and I'll tell you why. Because so he was the other one. So there were 2 guys that they waited until later in the week to fire. One was David Culley.
Joe Judge was the
other one.
11th. Yeah.
So Joe Judge was the other one fired. So that would have been it. So both of those guys survived the initial Black Monday and got fired later in the week. But I was kind of surprised by Culley because I mean obviously they had a terrible season, and that is not up for.
They did have that quarterback issue though, and like flip flopping. He had a lot of shit to deal with.
They knew what they were getting into.
Exactly.
That they weren't going to have. So I thought he would have bought himself at least one more season. I mean,
I would
especially
agree.
because so the Texans last year, between Bill O'Brien starting the season and then them finishing, I want to say Romeo Crennel was the interim head coach. Pretty positive if that's the case. Yeah, it was Romeo Crennel. Wow, I just got that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I've never heard that guy's name in my life, so that was impressive.
Yeah, he's another longtime defensive mind. But the Texans were 4-12 last year, so they really didn't do any worse. You know, this year they did pretty much the same. And you know, with what he was dealing with at the quarterback situation, last year they had Deshaun Watson play and they were 4-12. So I mean,
that is true. That is very true.
I thought the man would have got himself another season. Nice guy, David Culley. You know, longtime defensive assistant in the NFL, former Baltimore Ravens assistant. I remember John Harbaugh was real happy when he got his NFL opportunity. Maybe he ends up back in Baltimore. We'll see.
We'll see.
And then we've been calling for this one for weeks. Been literally since like Thanksgiving.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, when's it going to happen?
That was the least. This would be one of the least. Well, a lot of those are not surprising.
Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy, and it was also this is the second one that we've come across so far where it was a house cleaning. Although technically the Giants did too because Dave Gettleman, their GM, he retired. But it was probably one of those situations where they're like, we're going to fire you.
Yeah, so if you don't retire. It's a John Gruden situation, just a little more under the table there where no one knows.
Yeah, I feel like the NFL is just like organized mafia. I feel like there's so much that goes on like behind the closed doors that nobody even knows. But
the games might be rigged, man. You never know. I mean, you never know.
I don't want to go down that road. But yeah,
I'm joking, obviously.
No, I know, but I mean,
it is a thought that crosses our minds every now and then.
Especially when some shit happens. It's like this game is way too like that game, and we'll talk about it in a little bit here.
Like I hate to say that, but you know what I mean. Sometimes some shit happens, and you're like, are you fucking kidding me?
If I was ever gonna believe that a game was that Raiders Chargers game that just ended the regular season,
if they had just
wow.
Yeah, that one was especially. I wish they had just kneeled it out the whole game. That would have been really, really funny. But
we're gonna get into that whole strategy.
That would have been really nice. I mean, it would have been it would have been like really terrible for ratings, and I'm sure they wouldn't even allow that. They'd be like, no, fuck you guys. You got to play a damn game.
I don't think they could make them, bud.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if they didn't want to, if I was them, I would have gotten together and been like, hey guys, look.
What's Goodell gonna go down there on the field and spank them on their asses and like make them do it?
Oh, no. Don't piss off Daddy Goodell. You never know.
Yeah, but so the Bears fired Nagy and Pace on the 10th, one day after Chicago's season ended, with a loss to the Vikings. Not a surprise there. What was a surprise is the Bears did get up to like a 17-3 lead. Looked like the Bears were gonna at least take it, send Matt Nagy out on a winning note. At least. But Nagy had led the Bears to, I don't know if I mentioned it, but the Bears finished 6-11. And he led them to 2 playoff appearances in 4 years, including a best of 12-4 in 2018 that got him Coach of the Year honors.
Yeah, he ends his time leading the Bears with a 34-31 record, which is actually not like it's
Winning
average,
record.
but
It's a
it is a winning
record.
record though. Yeah, slightly, but it's yeah. So he did have some good years, but just given the way this year has gone, it just really isn't that surprising.
Right, right. I mean, the Bears are another team that started 3 different quarterbacks this season between Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, and Nick Foles. So
Mm-hmm.
not an ideal situation. Their offense wasn't that good to begin with, and
That's true.
obviously Matt Nagy, who's an offensive guy, just couldn't get it going. They did get into the playoffs. One other time I believe with an 8-8 record. Um, but yeah, so and then as far as Pace goes, Ryan Pace, Chicago would go 48-65 with Pace as the GM. His most notable moves being the decision to move up and to draft Mitchell Trubisky, number 2 overall in the 2017 draft, which, of course, as everybody knows, they could have had Patrick Mahomes with that spot. So obviously that was a solid draft pick. We all know. Mitchell Trubisky is still starting for the Chicago Bears. Oh wait, no, he's not. He's Josh Allen's backup in Baltimore or in Buffalo.
In Buffalo, yeah.
So then he also traded for Khalil Mack with the Raiders ahead of the 2018 season, and also drafting Justin Fields at 11th overall in the past 2021 draft. And it still remains to be seen how Justin ends up being, but he did a lot.
That's what I was thinking as well. I was going to say that definitely remains to be seen. We got to see how that plays out. I mean, so far
he'll always be tied to that move, though.
Absolutely. And then there's one last one, just kind of recap. This isn't from this week, but just talking about firings from the season. There's Urban Meyer, which, as we have discussed in the past, I'm sure you guys are somewhat familiar with that. Yeah. But it's always entertainment value talking about the Urban Meyer situation. So they fired him on the 16th of December after a 2-11 start to his very first season in Jacksonville. So it did not last long. This was also, I would say maybe more of a behavior firing than performance, but they were both pretty shitty. So I guess you could really
seem that way.
You could take your pick though. It could be both, but
his last game that they coached, they got shut out. I think it was like 20-0 to the Titans, and then he was like fired the next day. I remember Shad Khan released a statement where he's like, yeah, I went to the locker room after we got shut out by the Titans, and asked him what the plan was moving forward, and he's like he didn't really have any answers.
Oh, that's terrible.
I would have laughed if he would have just been like, my plan's to go back to college football and dip out of here at the end of the season. I mean, he probably will be.
Probably. He probably will go back given his record there. I'm sure somebody will take him back.
Yeah, for sure. But
yeah, the controversy with him started after he was seen in a viral video with a woman who was not his wife.
Yeah.
Dancing on him in an Ohio bar. And I'm sure he also did something a little with his finger and in other various places, whatever you I'm sure you can imagine. Well, I guess
it could be, that's like his going for one finger, when he holds it up for the extra point, after they score, which didn't.
You guys don't know where this has been.
Which didn't happen a lot because Jacksonville didn't score a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah. So on top of just doing, you can't do shit like that. There's a lot of internal issues with him as well. Like we said, including a staff meeting, apparently, in which he delivered a biting message that he's a winner and all of his assistant coaches are losers. So
I'm surprised none of his coaches punched him the fuck out.
I know, I don't see how that even flies or how that is even a thing.
Imagine if I was like a coach. Imagine if I'm like a coach on Jacksonville. I'm gonna be like, bro. I was like, fuck this. I was like, we're 2 and fucking whatever. I was like, this is fuck you, and just socked him in the face. It's like I don't even give a fuck.
Absolutely. So that's all the firings that we have. At least for now. You never know. There could be more. That shit does happen.
It would be late in the game. Imagine that. Because
you never know, though. You never know.
Yeah. I mean, the Giants and the Texans did move late, and you got to think that always puts you at a disadvantage because obviously all these other teams have been scheduling interviews. So
right. I mean, it is probably unlikely, but just saying. If there's any further firings, we'll definitely cover it.
Definitely.
All right, now we're going to go ahead and get into the final week of the season, week 18. This week, we'll do something a bit different and cover it by division, which kind of makes it convenient because every game happened to be a divisional game this week. Going to go ahead and start off with the NFC East. Personal preference of mine. Unfortunately, I don't know. I mean, I guess it really didn't matter a whole lot. Cowboys beat the Eagles 51-26. I guess that's kind of why it feels unfortunate. That's kind of a blowout in a sense. I mean, it's nearly twice the points, 1 point shy of twice the points.
Yeah.
And Dak Prescott also set a record. He surpassed Tony Romo for the most pass touchdowns in a season in Dallas history.
He did.
Which is 37.
There were a lot of passes, or I mean, a lot of records getting broken in the because this is the NFL's first ever Week 17th game, and the Eagles started Gardner Minshew, and they weren't at full capacity. I mean, obviously the Eagles had since clinched the a playoff spot the previous week with unfortunately their win over Washington. So the loss would drop them down to 9-8 and improve the
Cowboys to 12-5.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, the outcome of that game, I guess, really didn't matter all that much. The Cowboys would have remained the first seed either way. Eagles would have gotten in. Their seed would have improved, I'm sure, by a spot or something. I don't know the specifics on that, but ultimately, the outcome didn't matter, which is also a lot like the next NFC East game, the Washington versus the Giants game, which
sorry, what? Just real quick. You said that the Cowboys aren't the first seed. The Packers are.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say the first seed. I meant to say the first in the NFC East.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry.
That's what I meant to say.
Gotcha.
You are right. That is not right. Okay. But yes, that's what I meant to say. Like in the NFC East race, that win, whoever won that game didn't matter. You know what I mean? Like
right. Yeah. So Dallas already had the division locked up weeks. You're right. Yeah, exactly.
Right. The only thing is the Eagles may have improved their seed rating. Wherever they are, but I think they're sixth, maybe.
They are seventh because we got in at sixth.
Oh, the Niners are sixth. Okay, yeah. Well, even better.
Yep.
But yeah, the other NFC East game, the Washington and Giants game, Washington did fortunately come out on top, 22-7. Doesn't matter at all, for either team at this point. The Giants are 4-13 after that loss, and Washington finishes the season 7-10. So essentially the same as last season with one more loss because there's one more game. So however you look at that, same number of wins, an extra loss. So basically the same kind of a season.
Yeah.
But that closes out the NFC East for the season with Dallas taking the division, unfortunately, which is something we always hate to see. But.
Yeah. They've been looking good, though. That offense is explosive. I mean, we're going to have to, as we're going to cover here, the Niners are matched up with them in the playoffs in the first round.
Yes.
That offense has been looking explosive. I mean, 2 times in the last couple of weeks they've scored over 50. So, I mean, they're really starting to come together at a good time. So that's definitely concerning. But our defense has been playing great. But, yeah.
I just want to say one thing real quick before we move on to the NFC North. Just real quick. Just buck Dallas.
Yeah.
Just to end that.
I don't know if you went through it, but yeah. So Dallas would finish 12-5. The Eagles 9-8.
Yeah, I think I did.
Okay. And then did you cover? Yeah, and then
Washington 7-10 and Giants 4-13.
Okay, yeah, okay, all right.
I didn't do them all in order like that, but yeah, I guess should probably do all 4 in order. That's a good idea.
Okay, no worries. It's all good. Okay, so then the next division is going to be the NFC North. So the Green Bay Packers obviously finished that division in first place with a 13-4 record, and also the number 1 seed in the NFC playoffs. So they get the 1 bye. That's kind of the thing with the new playoff format. There's an extra wild card spot, but now only 1 team gets a bye. So the Packers were able to secure that with their 13-4 record. In the final game, they played the Lions, and shockingly enough, the Lions would end up pulling off the upset to go to 3-13-1. with a 37-30 game. Aaron Rodgers actually shockingly, I remember we discussed it on last week's show, whether he would play. He did start the game and played like the first half before giving way to Jordan Love, which I was very surprised by given the fact that, the Packers really already came in as the number 1 seed, so it's not like they had to clinch it in that game.
Right.
So kind of surprising to see him risk injury.
Surprising to see Aaron playing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
Very strange.
Yeah.
Like let Jordan Love get the whole game.
Yeah.
I mean, why bother playing Aaron at that point?
Yeah, and I mean he's got that toe injury coming in too, so I mean I figured they would have wanted to rest him for the playoffs. But I figure maybe they figured they've already got the week bye, so maybe he'll rest then. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But
that is an odd decision. I'm not sure what they were thinking there.
Yeah. And then covering the other game in the North was the Minnesota Vikings pulling off the come from behind win over the Chicago Bears 31-17. It was a game where the Bears were up at one point like 17-3 on the Vikings at halftime, and then the Vikings ended up coming back with a spirited effort in the second half of that game. Interesting thing about that game, as we mentioned earlier, that game was both teams had released like hours prior to the game. I think maybe even the Bears like the day or so before, and it had been speculated even longer than that both teams would be firing their head coaches. So, I mean, the Vikings ended up with a spirited second half, sending Zimmer out there with a win, and the Vikings to 8-9, and Chicago falling to 6-11. So we'll just go through the standings real quick, and we'll also put them on the screen for you guys as we go through. So Green Bay 13-4, Minnesota second place at 8-9, Chicago 6-11, Detroit 3-13-1.
Yes, and one just other interesting thing I noticed here, Green Bay was 8-0 at home. So I mean that's pretty awesome for Green Bay and their fans.
Considering they have home field advantage through the NFC playoffs, that's not good for anybody that has to go.
No, it's not. No, it is absolutely not. Especially with the way the weather is there. Oh my God.
Aaron might finally get a second bowl. I mean,
maybe.
I mean, I for our sake hope that he doesn't, but
I agree completely. I hope so as well.
Yeah.
Although I'd rather see that than the Cowboys if the Niners end up losing to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, if we end up getting knocked out, then I need Aaron.
I mean, at that point, I might just go for the Bucks because I live 20 minutes from Tampa. So
touchdown, Tom.
Whatever, man. That's all I got now, I guess. If the Niners get knocked out, I'm not even sure. I haven't even thought that far. Come on, Jimmy, to the Super Bowl again. Like, let's go. But yeah, speaking of the Bucks, next division we have is the Nfc South, which finished my favorite. Why is that my favorite division?
I'm just fucking around. I don't know. Yeah.
So the first game we have is the Buccaneers versus the Panthers.
Yep.
Buccaneers pretty much blew them out, 41-17. Yeah, the Panthers looked terrible. That was people around here were quite happy.
Sam Darnold back in the starting. They were like, all right, well, Cam's not working. Let's go back to Sam Darnold after Sam Darnold got healthy again, and then that's not working either. So, historic season for the Bucks.
13 wins in a season for the first time in franchise history. That's wow. Yeah. I mean, good for them. Like that's good.
You put Tom Brady on your roster, you can get 13 wins.
Yeah, that is true. If
you're willing to pay Tom,
he's only like 25 mil. I mean, Kirk Cousins is what, like 40 mil, and he's garbage compared to him. I mean, those are rough estimates, but I know Kirk Cousins makes more than he should. I mean, like at the very least.
Yeah. So, I want to say Tom's making like 20.
25, I believe.
25. Yeah, that's what it looks like.
That one I'm almost positive of. I'm like almost 100% on that.
That is a bargain.
Jeez. I know, that's insane.
Wow.
Any team would be like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
Jimmy makes 25.
No, I thought Jimmy makes like 30, 32, something like that. I thought he made a little more. Like, let's see, maybe 28. Maybe he makes 28.
He doesn't make.
It's at least 28 mil.
He doesn't make 30.
All right, let's see what it is. What is it?
28. 28-8.
Oh, it's 28.
How the fuck you know what Jimmy makes better than I do?
I don't know.
I was
That's
like,
insane.
He does. Jimmy makes more than Tom.
It came to me. I was like, no, it is. It's 28. I know it.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
Oh,
Tom
shit.
is a ripe bargain at $25 million a year. Jesus, that's like, my God, that's money well spent.
Yeah. I mean, shit, I will take Jimmy for 28 any day if he wants
Yeah.
to come to Washington.
Yeah.
Jimmy, if you ever see this, if you ever want to come to Washington for 28 million a year,
Please
sign me up.
I hope Jimmy watches the show. Jimmy, if you want to be on the show and you watch this, reach out to the please be on this show. Yeah. Anyway, so the Bucs would go to 13-4. The Panthers fall to 5-12. Also elsewhere in the NFC South.
NFC South, the Saints and the Falcons.
No, this game gave me personal trauma because watching it, and needing the Niners to win or the Saints to lose for us.
Yeah.
To win. And obviously watching that and the Saints were up the entire game, you're like, okay. And it's a really shitty thing to need Matt Ryan to like be the dagger,
to be your savior. You're like, come on, Matt Ryan.
It's like, oh Jesus. I was like,
Matty Ice, I need you.
Yeah. Now I know what the Atlanta people have been feeling like all season. Just relying on Matt Ryan to get something done for me.
They're just relying on him, and then every time it's just like,
yeah. So after that, and as we'll cover, the Saints would end up picking up the 30 to 20? Yeah,
30 to 20.
Win. So the Saints go to 9-8. The Falcons drop to 7-10. So we'll run through that real quick. Tampa first place 13-4. Saints second place 9-8, not in the playoffs. Atlanta 7-10, and the Panthers 5-12. Surprisingly, after going 6-10 last year and then 5-12 this year, the Panthers did not fire Matt Rule. So Matt Rule getting a third season. So you got to think for Matt Rule in Carolina next year, make or break season. If he doesn't do better, he's going to get fired.
I mean, you honestly, I guess I should have mentioned this during the NFC East part, but just real quickly, you could say the same with Ron Rivera in Washington. I mean, his second season is pretty much the same as the first. They did get to the playoffs last season, but so I feel like the third season for him also could be a similar situation.
I feel like the quarterback injury to Fitzpatrick week 1 bought Ron maybe an additional year. So Kyle had a couple rough seasons.
That depends how next season goes. Yeah. I feel like it really. I mean, if it's another like if it's like an 8 and I guess what would it be like 8 and 9? Yeah, 8 and 9 or something like that.
Yeah,
maybe like slightly better.
500. Or I think they need to go above 500.
Yeah, you're probably right. Like a 9 and 8. That would be that if at least it's some kind of improvement, something like that. Yeah. Then probably. But if it's it's got at least like one win better. Maybe he'll get an additional year. But we'll see how that goes.
I mean, old Jay Gruden. Let's give him a mention real quick. Let's we've mentioned both of them now, both Gruden boys on the show. Jay Gruden was the last Washington coach, obviously prior to Coach Rivera, and he was the coach for
I think it was 4 or 5 years.
3, 4. It was a long time.
4 or 5 years.
6 years.
6 years.
Well, like 5 and like a third. So he was fired. So he took over in 2014, and was fired in 5 games into 2019.
2019, yeah.
After an 0-5 start, after making the famous lines, famous last words, as they like to say, "I'm going to be coaching here as long as the key works." And then, like, the key didn't work anymore. And
then it didn't. Yeah.
It didn't work anymore. It's like, do you think he really showed up and tried? He's like, he just can't get in. He's like, no.
I hope so. That would be great. That would be the best thing to have on video ever.
Yeah, that was rough. So my point being, though, Dan Snyder gave Jay Gruden like 5.5 seasons. So I mean, he might give Ron a little bit more time. We'll have to see. But obviously, playoffs are definitely important. You got to try.
This next division, we have the NFC West. I'll let you cover it as your team is in it. But just one quick thing, I think it's very interesting. 3 teams from the NFC West are in the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Yeah, a lot of people were talking about that 3 teams from the West could get in all season. I
And
remember.
they did. Like, look
Yeah.
at that. And even the Seahawks at 7-10, that's not a great record,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah.
not like
Yeah.
terrible.
Our worst team, like I looked at a breakdown and I'll put it up on the screen because I think I have it somewhere. But our breakdown, if you look at the NFC West versus other teams, we by far had the best record
Absolutely.
of any
I mean,
team.
12-5. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, Rams
Yeah.
12-5.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, no,
The
no,
Cardinals
good.
11-6.
Yeah, let's go through
49ers with 10-7.
Yep.
And Seahawks, as I said, are 7-10, which, like,
Right.
you know, even 7-10, which isn't a
Yeah,
great record.
that's
but geez,
the worst
I mean,
team in our division.
yeah, which is not that. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not bad if that's
Yeah.
your worst team.
And you figure 3 games they didn't have Russell Wilson because of the finger injury. So it's like, you know,
Right,
that's
right.
a team that could have maybe been around 9-8, you know, something like that if he would have just been healthy for those games.
Yeah, that third spot could have been a lot closer. I mean, instead of
Yeah.
the Niners getting it, you know, they would have been right there if
Yeah.
maybe he was healthy.
Yeah, and I
I
mean,
mean, thankfully not. You know, glad they didn't, but
Yeah, absolutely. And the Cardinals had the lead for most of the season in the division, and the Rams, I mean,
Mhm.
basically late in the season, the Cardinals collapsed, and then the Rams kind of just, you know, took over.
Yeah.
Obviously, those additions, Odell started to play well for him, Von Miller. So all those acquisitions they started to make started to.
Yeah. That speaks well for the Rams in the playoffs. If they're coming
Yeah.
together now later in the season, that's honestly what you really want.
Right.
You don't want to have it be early on and then fall off. You want it
Yeah.
to be on when at the end when it
Yeah.
matters.
Now those players were, of course, big additions. However, not against the 49ers in a game where the Niners must have won to get in. As we mentioned with the Saints earlier, the Niners in a situation where they were at one point down 17-0.
Yeah,
in the
dude, I
first
remember
half.
seeing that. I was like,
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
fuck
Yeah.
is happening?
Yeah, let me put it on the screen here.
Oh.
So Sean McVay, after going up 17-0, the Rams, Sean McVay would be seen celebrating in the end zone with his team. Which, how is that not a penalty? How is the man not flagged for a penalty for
For
going on the
taunting
football
or
field?
yeah,
He
like,
walked
or
on.
that, yeah.
He walked onto the football field. You're not allowed to do that. Like what?
Mm.
That is insane. So he walks on out there and doesn't get called. But after that happened, like the Rams got outscored 27-7 for the remainder of the game. So
Jesus.
after Sean McVay went out there, but yeah, so the Niners needed to win that game, obviously, as we mentioned, and they ended up coming away with a 27-24 overtime win. We'll cover that more in a little bit here.
Yeah,
And
that
then
game was intense.
yeah, it definitely was one of the best games that we've played all season. What didn't start pretty, but we definitely finished when we needed to. And then the other game in the NFC West was the Seahawks.
The Seahawks and the Cardinals.
Yeah, the Seahawks pulling a 38-30 win over the Cardinals in a game where Arizona needed to win to have a chance to take the division, and Seattle just came out really with not a damn thing to play for, other than next season, and picked up the win. So obviously Arizona, they've lost 4 of the last 5 after starting the season 10-2. So that is not how you want your momentum to be looking heading into the playoffs. That is a very bad sign.
No, it is definitely absolutely not. No. Yeah, going into the playoffs, the Cardinals face the Rams. So I have a feeling if I was betting, I'd be betting that the Rams will win that game, given how the Cardinals have looked as of late. But we will see how that goes.
I think the Rams will probably take that one too. I mean, they've just looked like the more complete team at this point. And they even got out to a big lead against us, so we'll have to follow that one on what's the first ever Monday night wild card game. So that's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
We got a wild card game Monday night.
And then we have the Philadelphia Eagles at Tampa on Sunday, as well as the Niners versus Dallas game on Sunday as well.
Yep.
So we will definitely be watching those closely, at least me in particular, and you in particular as well.
Yeah, definitely hoping that the Niners can come up with a big win over Dallas. That's it's going to be a hell of a matchup. Their explosive offense. They're top ranked in the NFL offense against our number 4 ranked defense. Obviously, Bosa is going to be coming after Dak, so hopefully he can get there a few times.
Hopefully he gets a whole bunch of sacks. Hoping for at least 3.
I'm hoping for him to just set a playoff record. Maybe like 5 or 6.
That would be amazing. Oh my God,
that would be awesome. And then The Eagles Bucks. Obviously, the Bucks heavily. The Bucks are favored in that one. Not a surprise there. What's interesting though about the Bucks is, short of just blowing out the Panthers, they hadn't been looking as explosive. Recently they barely they narrowly squeaked out a win over the Jets 28-24. So, haven't been looking as dominant as they had in the past. But I do expect them to beat the Eagles. But the Eagles
I
have a
hope
really good
so.
the Eagles have a really good ground game. I mean, the Eagles have the best rushing attack in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, given the way Tampa has looked recently, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make it to the Super Bowl. But I do really hope that they at least beat the Eagles, because if I got to pick one, I would much rather see Tampa than the
Right.
Eagles win that game. So,
Understandable.
and then it would be kind of cool if the Niners play Tampa and they beat them.
Yeah, that would be cool. Maybe, yeah, it would happen in Tampa because they would have the home field. I mean, we're the
Oh my
sixth.
God, that would happen
Yeah,
in Tampa. I
yeah,
wonder how
yeah.
much tickets would be for that. Ooh, probably a
Expensive,
lot.
dude. I bet.
Yeah, like way
Uh,
too expensive. And then like, who am I gonna go with?
I'd try to go, dude. If they
I'm
get
like,
to
yeah,
that
I'm like, gotta
if they
fly
get
your
to
ass
that
out
point,
here.
dude, I absolutely would. I mean, I'd spend a whole check on it. I don't even give a shit. Anyway, so anyway, yeah. So let's go to the last NFC team to cover. Obviously, the Packers getting the first round bye. So they will
Yes.
play. They will play a game the following week in the divisional round, and we'll have to see who they get matched up. We'll definitely cover that. And then for the AFC side of things, so let's start with the AFC East, where two teams would end up getting in. With the Buffalo Bills, this division came down to the last week of the season, with both teams coming in with a 10-6 record. Whichever team won would have ended up getting the division. Buffalo ended up playing
The Jets.
the Jets and beating them 27-10, which would improve the Bills to 11-6. The Patriots would play the Dolphins and lose 33-24 in a game where, despite winning, Brian Flores ended up getting fired anyway. And so the Bills would finish 11-6 in first place. The Patriots 10-7 in second. The Dolphins very close third with 9-8, and then the Jets coming in last place at 4-13. This is a Jets team that won 2 games last year, so doubling up on that, and definitely with Zach Wilson having something to build on.
Definitely.
So let's cover the playoff matchups in that game real quick. It's going to be New England and Buffalo, actually. So they're going to meet. They're going to meet for the third time this season after meeting twice and splitting the regular season series. They meet twice they meet for now a third time Saturday night in the AFC wildcard round. So it's going to be interesting to see who wins. It's supposed to be a cold game, and I've read something that Josh Allen does not play well in the cold weather. So we'll have to monitor that situation and see who comes away with the win. The next division,
the next division, the AFC North. We have the first matchup was the Steelers and the Ravens, where the Steelers unfortunately came out on top 16-13, which improved the Steelers to 9-7, and dropped the Ravens to 8-9, which got the Steelers into the playoffs.
It did. Yeah, that was an interesting game, because if they didn't win that game, it was set to be Big Ben's last game.
Yeah, that was disappointing. The fact that they won, I was really, really hoping for a loss. I mean, and I like the Ravens. As I've said, if I got to pick an AFC team, Baltimore Ravens, they're from Maryland, where I grew up. That'd be the team I'd pick. So I'm especially not happy about it, but I also really wanted it to be Ben's last game.
Yeah. Well, they did get TJ Watt tying the single season sack record of Michael Strahan. He wasn't able to break it, but he did tie 22.5 sacks, which is an insane amount of sacks.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And so the Steelers are definitely getting in.
Yes, and then the next game, the Bengals and the Browns. The Browns won that game. Didn't make much of a difference. The Bengals are still the number 1 seed in the AFC North. The Bengals are 10-7 after this game, and the Browns are 8-9. It was a 21-16 game. I'm not sure if I'd mentioned that yet.
Yeah, I don't think you did, but that's okay. And that was a game where neither team started their, you know, opening opening day starter. The Bengals obviously resting Joe Burrow for the playoffs, um,
Hmm.
and the Browns obviously having last week shut down Baker Mayfield with a shoulder injury, so they would start Case Keenum. So the Bengals starting Brandon Allen. Um, Obviously, the Browns picking up a win. So the breakdown on that team was the Bengals won the division at 10-7, Pittsburgh finishing a close second at 9-7-1, Cleveland 8-9, Baltimore 8-9. So that division was pretty close. That division overall,
Yeah,
span of about 2 games between all
definitely.
three teams. And Baltimore's season really kind of went off the rails when Lamar got carted off the field and he never returned after that. And they had to
Yeah.
start Josh Johnson and Tyler Huntley. And they showed some good things, but
I was gonna say Tyler Huntley did look good at times. He
he
looked
he,
he
he
looked
looked
quite
he
good.
looked good, but they lost all those games that he started. So
That
it's
is
like as
true.
far
That
as
is
far as
true.
like
It's like Kirk Cousins. You
yeah
look good, but then
yeah
when it matters,
yeah.
you suck.
So the Ravens ended up missing the playoffs. The
Yeah.
next division is the AFC South, where the Tennessee Titans would win that division at 12-5 and get the number one seed, and the AFC's one bye, so they
I mean,
don't
this
have to
this
play.
division was really like a two-team division.
Right.
Like really, I mean, like I mean,
Exactly. And then as soon as the Colts lost their last 2 games to the Raiders, and then shockingly Jacksonville, which we'll get into that. In the shocker of the week, it seems like there's always an upset every week. This
Mhm.
one's this week's was no different. There was the what was the score here? Yeah, the 26-11 Jacksonville win over the Colts in a game
Yeah.
where basically we talked about it last week. All the Colts had to do, they weren't going to win the division, but all they had to do to get into the playoffs was beat the Jaguars. The
And they
you know
couldn't beat the Jaguars
the coming in 2-14 Jaguars, who
with
after
no
that
head
win,
coach or
yeah
an interim head
yeah.
coach.
So
Like,
after that, the Jaguars. Well, we'll run down from the top down. So Tennessee finishing 12-5. Indianapolis 9-8, still a winning record, but not in the playoffs. The Texans were 4-13. They fired David Culley, and the Jaguars 3-14, which was still bad enough to qualify the Jaguars for the first overall pick again in this year's draft. Even though they
although
did,
that Titans Texans game was very close, it was 28-25. You didn't mention that yet.
yeah, yeah,
That was an extremely close game. I would not have expected to be anyway. I mean, obviously the Titans were resting their starters, but still,
they weren't actually.
they
If I
weren't. Oh,
no
really?
no no
I
they
don't.
put
Okay, I
yeah
just assumed
yeah
that. I wasn't sure, but
yeah. That's interesting that they didn't. A lot of teams didn't, but yeah. So Tennessee, I think they might have later on in the game because Tennessee was up big, and then like the Texans started to rally back, but obviously it wasn't enough. And it wouldn't
no.
have really mattered. Well, actually, it would have mattered because if they wouldn't have won that game against Houston, Kansas City would have been the number one seed. So that kind of leads us
Uh,
into the AFC West, which Kansas City did win with a 12-5 record. This division was pretty competitive at times, especially when Kansas City was struggling earlier in the season. But Kansas City would end the season on a 28-24 win over the Broncos, a game which Drew Lock would start for the Broncos, and
it sounds a lot like Andrew Luck. I know,
yeah,
right? Like that's
I know.
that's always what I think.
That's what I was thinking. So
One thing about the Chiefs quickly, it's surprising the way their season went. They started out pretty good, and then they kind of just kind
yeah,
of fell apart for a bit, and then they came back strong.
yeah, they really have, yeah. And then the other game in that division, which we mentioned earlier, with the Steelers beating the Ravens. Um, this was an interesting situation. Let's talk about this real quick before we move on. There was an angle that was speculated that with after the Steelers won, since since the Steelers have that tie on their record, if
Hmm.
the Raiders and the
Chargers.
would have tied in the final game of the regular season on Sunday night, then both the Raiders and the Chargers would have gotten in, and the Steelers would have been eliminated from the playoffs. So
Yeah, I don't understand why they didn't. I mean, like, why they didn't just do it. I mean, technically, if both
so
head coaches are like, I just want to kneel 80
yeah,
times, how many
yeah,
times it would be.
and
Why can't they do that?
that was the idea. Is like, it's like, are these coaches gonna just knee it out and not even play a game? Are they gonna play just like reserve players? What's gonna happen? And like I have never been more excited for the kickoff of a Sunday night game, just like the anticipation to see like what happened, and then like it was just a normal game, and
Yeah,
both teams
it's
tried to
like,
win.
come on,
Yeah.
what is this shit?
So
It would have been really interesting to see. And
yeah.
honestly, it was in both their best interests. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
anybody watching would be like, you know what? We get it. Like,
You
come on,
you
man.
you would think, bud, that like, I mean, if you're Brandon Staley or Rich Bisaccia, one of the coaches, like, you would think you're picking up the phone and you're like,
You're like, hey, bud,
hey,
how about we
hey,
just, how about
hey,
we
Bra-
just
hey, Brandon, it's Rich. Hey, bud. So listen, man. I know you fucking heard about this. It's like, I know, if we somehow tie this game, even if we both go down and kick a field goal, and like and tie this game, like we both get in, like your odds go from 50% of making the playoffs to 100% in that
I
situation.
guess like there must obviously be some rules in place that maybe if the coaches on their own decided like we're just gonna take knees, but like there's no way that could happen without them planning beforehand.
You
would
would
be
think,
like
though,
illegal, right? So.
Yeah, you would think though, even, and there's not a rule against it, by the way, but you would think even with the coaches, even if they're like, well, for respect of the game, you would think that the owners, who are just like, all about their team getting into the playoffs, might be like, well, I get that you're like that, and I respect that, but like you're taking the fucking tie and getting us in. I'm surprised that like either Mark Davis or Dean Spanos didn't have something to do with that and just be like, like we can get in. And it's weird because that game goes to overtime. Crazy enough. And this was maybe the game of the season. I'm not biased when it comes to football. I mean, like, this game might have legit been the game of the season. It was a 32-32 game, goes to overtime. And as time's running down on the clock, it's the weirdest damn thing. Like, Brandon Staley, the Chargers head coach, screws himself over, and he takes a timeout with 2 seconds left in the overtime period. The Raiders might have let the clock expire. It seemed like they might have. And the Chargers, I don't know if they were trying to, like, because it was on a 4th down, and I don't know if he was trying to, like, ice the kicker. But let me let you know what it
That
what
is
it was
the
here.
weirdest.
It was, yeah. So
it almost ended in a tie then.
Yeah,
in overtime.
So exactly, and then at that point, the Chargers would have gotten in. So the 47, it's a 47-yarder. So I think Staley, the Chargers coach, was probably trying to ice the kicker, Carlson. But Daniel Carlson, like, they put up some stat in the game. He's like 35 of 35 in the Raiders Allegiant Stadium. Guy's never missed in the Raiders Stadium. I was like, this guy's not going to miss this kick. I was like, with the playoffs on the
47
line,
yards, that's not that far.
Yeah. So he drilled that, and Staley looked like an idiot for like, why would you take the timeout? The Raiders seemed like they might have let you. And sure, the Raiders could have taken a timeout with 1 second on the clock and kicked the field goal and won. But yeah, by virtue of that, Big Ben in the NFL lives another week. And we'll go over these AFC matchups real quick. Obviously, we said the Titans get the first round bye. We got Raiders and Bengals on Saturday. Battle between a team in the Raiders that's really, showing a hell of a lot of heart this season.
Yeah.
And then a team in the Bengals that's just been going off. Joey Burrow throwing for about 500 every game, lighting up the world. We talked about New England and Buffalo Saturday night.
Yes, and then we got, unfortunately, the Steelers and the Chiefs, and hopefully the
Chiefs
just knock them the fuck right out, one and done.
I imagine
and I'll be
these
happy.
teams played like 3 weeks ago in the regular season, and the Chiefs won 36-10. So I imagine that the Chiefs to definitely win this game. Although, I mean, the Steelers are going to be coming out playing inspired football for Big Ben. So
oh God, no, he's done. One and done. One and done. I'm calling it right now. One and done.
Yeah.
Just like Dallas. Right?
All right. Yeah, just like Dallas. Yeah, Dallas is going down. I mean, honestly, I don't think as good as the Dallas offensive line is, I don't think that they're ready to handle Nick Bosa. And we'll get more on into that in just a second.
Definitely. What's up, Redskins fans, or soon to be something else? But what's up? Coming off a win, unfortunately, kind of a they call garbage time scores. This is kind of like a garbage time win, but it is what it is. It's good to get a win. We won 22-7 over the Giants, who are probably the worst team in the NFL. So thank God we won by a decent amount. Washington would start the ball first against the Giants, which usually isn't particularly a good thing for us, but it obviously worked out well this time. Yeah, usually that's not a good sign. I was not happy to see that, but went into this game fairly optimistic given the state of the Giants, and I'm glad I did because it was an easy win.
The organization is in disarray.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. On the second play of the game, Heineke would complete a pass on rep to Terry McLaurin for an early first down. It's nice to see Terry getting in there, getting some action. Yep. There's been a couple weeks there where he was not targeted much, and I know that disappointed a lot of us.
Right.
It's like why would you not at least try and get him the ball? It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yep. Yeah, it really doesn't. Yeah, and then Gibson would put together a few nice runs on the drive. I think his first 3 carries he had like 19 yards. Heineke would make a nice play, avoiding a sack, and found McLaurin down the field on a deep pass for 30 yards. So, yeah, Terry had something like, after really struggling, like you mentioned, the last few weeks, he had something like 3 catches in the first quarter. So
Yeah. After that, Taylor would pick up a first down with his legs to move the ball into the red zone. On 3rd and 4, Heineke overthrows Cam Sims in the end zone. But fortunately, Washington would at least add a 23-yard Joey Sly field goal, which would take almost 6 minutes off the clock. Joey Sly starting his Washington career 10 for 10. So, I mean, since we picked him up, I was pretty happy with it, and especially after the first game. Exactly. He's done very well for us. And side note about Joey Sly, dude is a massive kicker. Like he's easily the biggest kicker in the league. I mean, you look at him, he looks like a linebacker. Dude is massive.
He's a lot bigger than Robbie. Robbie looks like he's like sick or something. I was like,
or a lot bigger than Tress Way. Yeah. I mean, he's big. The Giants were starting Jake from State Farm.
That's where he's from. He's actually from Georgia, but yeah. Either way.
But yeah, it sounds great. Yeah. Starting off facing a 3rd and 4, Fromm would scramble and pick up 18 yards and a first down. Later on in the drive, the Giants facing a 4th and 1, Washington would be called for a neutral zone infraction, which gave the Giants a first down. A few plays later, though, the Giants would attempt to go for it on another 4th and 1. They tried to hand it off to their rookie receiver Bachman, but it was read perfectly in the backfield by Jamin Davis, and he tackled him for a loss. I remember seeing that happen. That was just going nowhere. They handed it off, and he was just right there and just took his ass down.
It's one of his better plays of the season, so it was good to see him in the last game of the season. At least go off on a positive note. And then he had the sack the week before against the Eagles. So, Jamin Davis the last couple of weeks starting to come on a little bit.
Yeah, hopefully he improves in the offseason and next season. I'm sure he'll be around still next season. He'll start to improve and do more for us. So. Washington would take over after a run by Gibson of 3 yards on first down. Terry would catch a screen pass and gain 12 more yards, which would officially put Terry over 1,000 yards on the season. Yep. So big record-breaking day for Terry. There would be another record later on in the game, which I'm sure we will cover. Yep. Taylor would take a deep shot, but the ball was overthrown and picked by Xavier McKinney. However, Terry blasted him, and he would drop the ball before being able to gain possession, and it was incomplete.
Yeah, like as soon as he hit the ground like that, because as soon as he picked it, Terry just like blew him up and just like he hit the ground and the ball just.
Yeah, Terry playing some defense there, and that was a nice hit.
Some defensive back, exactly. So, let's see here. And so that ball would be ruled incomplete. The pick wouldn't stand. And then Washington would end up getting the opportunity to punt the ball back to the Giants. Jake Fromm tried to fit the ball in a tight, or tried to set up a tight end screen to Kyle Rudolph, but it was tackled for a loss of 2 by interior defensive lineman Tim Settle, who made a nice play. And
Hope to see a lot of him, and doing well, especially because I know he'll be back next season. Especially if we have to lose one of the guys we have now, he's going to be one of the main guys.
yeah, I could see if Payne goes on,
Right,
I could
Payne.
see
That's who I was thinking.
him stepping up. Yeah, for sure
Definitely.
on that interior defensive line. So then Washington would go, or the Giants, I'm sorry, would go 3-and-out. It really didn't matter at this point because honestly, this game was pretty much a punt fest in most of the second quarter. Eventually, one bright spot in the second quarter would be a third down sack of Jake Fromm, which was split between John Allen and William Bradley King, which was pretty good. That was the first sack that Washington got on the day, and that would bring, let me give you, I want to say Pro Bowler John Allen. Congrats again. I know we've mentioned that, but
I think he's got like 8 sacks or 7.5 sacks.
I want to say
something like that.
I think he's got 9 now. Let me verify.
Okay.
He has 9. Yep. So career high 9 sacks, beating a previous career high of 8, and making his first Pro Bowl. So congrats to him. Also, Brandon Sheriff getting into the Pro Bowl.
Who may not be around because I guess since we're mentioning him, he apparently declined a record contract recently to be the highest paid guard in the NFL.
He had said something that like he wants to come back at Washington. I think the angle, if speculation is correct, is that now keep in mind as we said he is a guard, but I think he's trying to get tackle money, which they make a little bit more. So I think I think at this point it's not that he's trying to leave Washington. I think he's trying to leverage the situation.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next Washington drive started great with a 27-yard Gibson run. However, it would stall out and Tressway would come in to punt again. Cam Sims would down the punt inside the Giants' 5 to pin them deep. And in a super bizarre sequence, the Giants would run back-to-back quarterback sneaks, one of which was on a 3rd and 8 by their end zone.
Oh my God, they got booed.
And this got they just got so many boos from the New York crowd, which is understandable.
It's the ultimate give up play. It's like,
man, like what are you doing twice in a row? Like
it just shows your offensive ineptitude. And I mean, it's really not a shock to see why after this game. I'm shocked that it took 2 days to fire Joe Judge after this shit. I mean, this is pathetic. I mean, and this was the 6th straight game that the Giants would lose by 10 or more points. So not only are they losing games, but they're losing by a large margin.
And the best part about that, when they did that, and they had to punt the ball back, we got it with 1:34 left in the half. So we had some chance to add some more points. And on the first play of the drive, Heineke takes a deep shot and completes it to Terry McLaurin for a gain of 40 yards.
Yeah.
So it gets us, way down the field.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Leonard Williams would sack Taylor on the next play. It would be the Giants' 3rd sack of the day, one of the few things that they did well.
Yeah. Their defensive line is pretty good.
Yes, it is. After a couple of short completions to Jarrett Patterson, they would add a 43-yard Joey Sly field goal to make it 6-0 at the half.
Yep. Joey Sly, 11 for 11 now.
Absolutely.
He's going to take this into next season now. I want you to know that because he's coming back, I bet. I mean, he's earned himself the right to come back.
I believe he definitely will come back.
Yeah. And then so the Giants get the ball coming out of the half. Whoop-de fucking do at this point with the way that offense has looked. Facing a 3rd and 12. Jake Fromm taking a deep shot for Golladay. And the ball just past the fingertips of Golladay. It almost seemed like Golladay wasn't running the route.
Yeah, that was a weird one. It was like almost like I remember when we first saw it, it was like, dude, he didn't even try and catch it. But then he did try and catch it, but it was just weird.
The Giants are just like moving on like autopilot. Like I feel like it's just, the lights are on, but nobody's home. It's just like one of those situations where I think, they all knew that Joe Judge was probably on his way out and just nobody gave a shit. They played like a team that didn't give a damn. Yeah. So
on Washington's next drive was very run heavy with Gibson, which will turn out to be fruitful as the game continues. Williams and Patterson also getting carries on the drive as well. They both looked very good the times that they've had, other than the one time Williams had that fumble, but they both look very, very strong. I believe they'll both be back next season. The best run between the pair of them was a 23-yard run by Jonathan Williams.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, we do know now actually that Jonathan Williams.
That's true. We do
Yeah,
know that. That's right.
yeah. So also a report that Washington has signed a couple players for the future. First being Jonathan Williams getting signed to a 1-year deal. Also cornerback Corn Elder, former Carolina player of Ron's, getting signed to a 1-year deal. He appeared in some games with Washington this year as well. And then they also picked up um, lifetime backup running back Reggie Bonifon, which I don't really foresee him taking snaps from anybody, especially with, as we've talked about, they've got a pretty deep running back's not a position you guys are hurting at.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So, So uh, on that drive, facing a 3rd and 8, or fourth and 8, Ron would bypass a 54-yard field goal attempt, which I'm not sure if that was just more the conditions, because obviously we know Joey Sly has enough leg for that.
Definitely.
So they would end up punting, and that was a good decision as Tress Way would pin the Giants back inside the 20. So good to see him off the COVID list and punting well again.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, after that, though, Cam Curl would exit the game after a collision with a teammate when making the tackle.
Yep.
And then the Giants would convert a rare 3rd and 4 on a screen pass to Booker. However, on the very next play, Fromm looked for Evan Ingram in the flat, but Bobby McCain would jump the route and return it all the way for a touchdown, which was just beautiful. Beautiful. Well, Washington would go for 2 for some reason. Taylor had a ton of time running right, running left, just going back and forth.
Running all over the place.
Yeah, he was just, was chicken with his head cut off. And then throwing for Gibson, but it would be knocked away incomplete. So I'm not sure why. I know why they went for 2 to make it 14-0, 2-possession game. Like, I get it. But at the same time, it's like, just.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it in the sense that, like, what about the Giants offense scares you to go for 2 at that point?
Yeah, it's just an odd choice, but I mean, ultimately it didn't matter, but
it did
still an odd choice given the state of the game.
Probably just because it's not a riverboat game if there's not something to.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
And then so the Giants would start to put a little drive together with Fromm converting a 3rd and 2 on another scramble. That was definitely his best.
That was his thing. The
best element of his game for sure was his mobility, and he wasn't even that mobile. He just had some timely runs.
Yeah.
But the Giants would end up. The Giants' drive would extend into the 4th quarter, and on a 4th and 5, the Giants would pick up a 4th down on a short pass to Saquon Barkley. When Washington came with I think they came with like a 5-man rush. They sent an extra guy on the blitz, and he fired it in real quick to the back on like a quick screen and picked up the 1st down.
Yeah, they got a couple of 4th down conversions there.
They did.
After that one, they got another one, 4th down, 4th and 2 this time, and he Fromm finds Galladay for a 1st down.
With the offense, I mean, it was a lot of desperation. They really they really had to go for it a lot.
Definitely. So the Giants finally managed to turn the drive into points with 11 minutes and 24 seconds left in the 4th quarter when Jake Fromm threw a 22-yard touchdown pass to Darius Slayton to cut the lead from 12 to 7.
Yep.
So next thing, great aspect of this game. I mean, again, the outcome of this game didn't really matter, but we already had Terry McLaurin's 1,000 yards being broken, which is great. And coming into this game, Gibson needed 125 yards to top 1,000 rushing on this season. And on Washington's next drive, he would surpass that for the first time in his career. Mm-hmm. He would, of course, be the one to cap off the drive with an 18-yard rushing touchdown to pull ahead 19-7 after the extra point. He also set a new record with 21 touchdowns in his first 2 seasons, most all-time by any Washington player, breaking the old record held by Alfred Morris.
I was surprised that Alfred had that record.
I know, right?
I was like, of all the Washington players, you've got like,
I know, right?
You got like Riggins, you got, who's
Clinton Portis.
Yeah. Clinton Portis would have been another one that I would have thought. Santana Moss. So
Santana Moss was a receiver.
Well, I mean this is total touchdown records. It's not like running back. It's not
Oh, I
rushing
thought it was
touchdowns.
just running back. Oh, really?
No,
Okay.
this is
I
total
thought it was just a
touchdowns.
rushing touch.
No.
Oh, well, you know what's crazy? I was going to say he only had like 7 or 6 touchdowns this
Yeah.
season. It was
Well,
mostly last season. He had 14 last season, I think, and 7 this season.
yeah. So he had I think he actually had. I want to say he had 9. But he had like 3 on the through the air receiving. So I want to say he had like
Okay.
6. Yeah.
I see.
So 7 rushing touchdowns, 3 receiving touchdowns.
Okay.
So he had
I
10
see.
total touchdowns.
Okay, I got you then.
Whereas he had 11
He had
all
11,
last season,
I would
but they
assume.
were all on the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Well, you know what? He probably got a lot of those receiving touchdowns because McKissick was out for a bit.
Yeah.
And God, what if we had a healthy team, man? All right. Well, on to the ending of this last game. The way it finished out. The Giants would start the next drive with 6:28 to play, down 2 scores. But on the opening play, Fromm would lose the football, and it would be recovered by Tim Settle.
Yeah. So Tim Settle making a few big plays,
And that's great to see.
Yeah. And one last thing that I'm just going to cover real quick. In that game, this is the first time in a Washington season where with Taylor Heineke going over 3,000 yards, Terry going over 1,000 yards receiving, and Antonio Gibson going over 1,000 yards rushing, that they've had a 3,000-yard passer and 1,000-yard rusher and 1,000-yard receiver all in the same season.
Since when?
I don't know the exact year, but I know that the last time Washington had a 3,000-yard passer was in 2017 with Kirk Cousins, his last year there. And then I also have this graphic that we'll put up that shows some of the Washington quarterbacks in their record that they've started recently. So as we have that up there, we'll continue this. Washington would add a third Joey Sly field goal to extend the lead to 22-7 with 4:40 left in the game. This was the second sack we were talking about. James Smith-Williams and Shaka Toney coming up with a splitting a sack on Fromm. So a couple of the depth signings as far as the defensive line, good to see them getting some pressure on the quarterback. And facing a 4th and 17, despite being down 2 scores and still, in a situation where you'd expect a team to go for it, the Giants continued to kind of wave the white flag and punt for their 6th time. So Washington would keep the run game going, and they would run for a season high, which I know you were excited about, 225 yards.
Yeah, dude, that was exciting. Yeah, 225, damn.
Yeah.
I mean, but it is the Giants though, so it's like you can't get too excited. Yes, I was excited about it, but at the same time, it's like you can't get too excited though.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I mean, it's something to build off of, especially going.
And it's a nice ending to a season that was already over. I mean, like I said before, this game really didn't matter, but it was nice. I mean, at least for it to go the way it did. I mean,
yeah. And I mean, on the day, like Heineke, we'll go through the top numbers real quick. So Heineke on the day, only 9 of 18 passing for 120 yards. They really didn't need to throw the ball much. No touchdowns. Gibson, 21 carries, 146 yards, 1 touchdown. Jonathan Williams, 7 carries for 45 yards to earn himself that contract.
Yeah.
Jarrett Patterson, 6 for 21. DeAndre Carter had a little end-around play for 11 yards as they continue to use that as an element. I think they need to continue that next season. He's like their little Deebo Samuel.
I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree.
Terry had, after a few rough games, had 4 catches for 93 yards. To lead Washington, next highest was Patterson with 2 for 14. And really not anybody else did much because there wasn't much passing involved. Terry kind of handled the bulk of that.
Yeah, one of the downsides of the way the injuries and stuff have affected us, Keith Ismail, our 4th starting center of the season, snapped it way over Taylor's head on a 3rd down play where he made a great play just to recover the ball and to throw it away without eating the sack. We would have to punt for the 6th and final time. I mean, at this point, it really doesn't matter. It's 22-7. To end the game, Giants would move the ball 46 yards with 27 of that coming from another Jake Fromm scramble.
Yeah.
However, as the game was coming to an end, he threw his 2nd interception of the day once again to Bobby McCain,
Bobby.
which sealed the win. So
Damn it, Bobby.
it's nice to go out on a win on the final game of the season. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
it really didn't make much of a difference. I guess we just lost a few draft positions, which I know some people. I mean, if you look at it, you're like, I mean, I think I'd rather enjoy a win the
Yeah,
last game of the season.
I think that's something that build off of.
My logical mind wants to be like, no, fucking just lose, man. Just get the higher draft pick. But then you're like, yeah, but that sucks. Like,
So it's always more enjoyable to win. And
absolutely.
Jake Fromm, we'll just give you his. He was 15 out of 31 for 103 yards, one touchdown, two picks. I think he was better than what Glennon was giving him the last couple weeks. And then 5 carries for 53 yards. So he was their leading rusher. Saquon only had 11 for 30. 11 carries for 30 yards.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Well,
obviously not a game to recap next week, but we will go over any Washington news that happens.
Yeah, basically anything from this point on will just be probably news about the new name, things like that. We'll obviously be covering the playoffs if you're interested in that, but we'll probably have just short updates if anything comes out with Washington. Obviously, the name change when that happens, especially February 2nd, we'll definitely be talking about that. Yeah, and then as the various things that happen, come to be, we'll definitely discuss that.
Yep.
So,
all right, thanks everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks everyone. Have a good night.
Hey faithful, thanks for joining us this week on the Niners News Update. Today we are going to recap the Rams game and talk about the upcoming playoff matchup we got in against the Cowboys. First, just want to touch on a couple real quick pieces of information regarding the roster. The Niners would go ahead and activate running back Trey Sermon from the injured reserve list, so he will be available again after injuring his ankle earlier in the season. So he's expected to play against the Cowboys in the playoffs. Also, it was reported Trent Williams would not practice on Wednesday. However, Kyle had stated that he's feeling a lot better than he was on Sunday when he missed the Rams game, which you never want to have the best left tackle in football out when you're facing the Rams. But luckily, we were able to survive that.
By the skin of your teeth, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. Trenton Cannon, who was, had that scary moment with the ambulance having to be taken to the hospital, is designated to return to practice. So that's a good sign. And then Elijah Mitchell didn't practice, but that's just because he's got an ongoing knee thing. It's probably more precautionary. Jimmy's was limited, and then Wishnowski, and we'll get more into that, but he's dealing with a concussion. So now in terms of the game. So the game ended up being a hell of a come from behind. The second biggest comeback. Yeah.
Fucking frightening at one point. Like
the second biggest comeback of all the biggest comeback all season was a game that the Ravens had like week 4 for 19 points. But this was 17 points, so this was the second biggest comeback all season long. So but it didn't start out well. So let's see here. The Rams started out with the ball, and after a penalty and 2 unsuccessful runs, they would face a 3rd and 12. But Stafford ends up finding Odell Beckham on an impressive catch for the first down, which would keep the Rams moving with possession. We saw the return of Cam Akers, who was the Rams starting running back. I remember we talked about this in the preseason episode. He tore his Achilles back in July. He was expected to miss an entire year. And he was active and playing football in January. So pretty impressive, although he didn't really have much of an impact in the game. And get more into that in a little bit. But as far as like a production standpoint, it was good for him to get out there. And I'm sure they wanted to have him ready for the playoffs, but he didn't really have much of a factor in this game against the Niners' stout run game. So the Niners would have the Rams facing another 3rd and 9. But Stafford would find Cooper Kupp deep for a gain of 46. So Cooper Kupp, who's just been literally going off. Yeah. He's going off of it. And, I mean, his fucking season that he's having is just incredible. I mean, he just barely fell short of Calvin Johnson's single-season receiving record, like just short. and he set an all-time Rams receiving record for their
Yeah, like
franchise.
we had mentioned, he possible dark horse MVP candidate with
Yeah.
the season he's having.
Yeah,
Not
absolutely.
likely, but
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely gets some consideration just because, I mean, that, like him and Debo, just for what they're doing at the receiver position,
Yeah.
are really going off. So the Rams managed to convert 3 third downs on this drive, but facing a 3rd and 6, we finally got to Stafford when Armstead would come up with a big sack to set up a 4th and 16. This would force the Rams to attempt a 43-yard Matt Gay field goal, which was good. But after a 15-play, 67-yard drive that took almost 9 minutes off the clock, you'd expect to come away with more. I mean, to only come away with a field goal was actually a win for the Niners defense. But as we mentioned earlier, Trent Williams was out, missing only his 2nd game all season with the elbow. So Colton McKivitz started. You might think Jalen Moore, who had played a little bit of tackle earlier in the season, in place of McGlinchey. Tom Compton started really being the guy. But Colton McKivitz playing his first snaps of the season against the Rams, getting the start, and he held up admirably against the Rams. They've got a good pass rush.
Yeah, it's surprising that they would put somebody in like that.
With Leonard Floyd, a guy that hasn't played any snaps. Like, he played some last season, but he didn't play any snaps at all this season. So,
Yeah.
in a game where the Niners had to win, going with young Colton McKivitz. So the Niners would end up starting backed up at their own 8. And 2 plays later, facing a 3rd and 4, Jimmy finds Trent Sherfield for a gain of 13 and a first down, which would be his 9th catch of the season. Always good to see him get a little bit involved more than just on special teams. And the drive would end up stalling out after 6 plays, and the Niners would end up punting. After a 3rd down throw to Hasty was deflected by Traven Howard. Like, he got his hand right in there. Like, the ball was right there towards Hasty. Maybe a little underthrown, but he got his hand in there for a nice deflection and broke it up. And then on the following drive, the Rams would continue to look pretty good as they continued to move the ball down the field at relative ease. Stafford started 9 of 9 for 115 yards. And between that and the finish that he had against the Ravens in the 4th quarter last week, he actually had set a personal and a Rams record of 24 straight completions.
Wow.
Yeah. But on his 8th completion was a gain of 9 yards to Higbee. But what's notable about that Higbee would limp off the field, but that was only for a couple plays. Dre Greenlaw, who was returning from injury and playing in just his 3rd game all season, would get flagged for a helmet-to-helmet hit on Van Jefferson, which would give the Rams a free 15 yards. Stafford would finally throw his first incompletion on a 2nd and 8. With the Rams facing a 4th and 1, Sean McVay, of course, would go for it. And on a nice play-action fake where the Niners totally bought the run, Stafford finds Higbee wide open in the back of the end zone to put the Rams ahead 10-0. So, like I said, Higbee was only out 2 or 3 plays. So, good news for the Rams. He was able to get back in there. And and then on the first play of our 2nd drive, Jimmy would go with a play action to Mitchell, but quickly come under pressure and had the ball knocked out of his hand for a forced fumble. Luckily, as we just mentioned, Tom Compton, who's been in there starting for McGlinchey and playing well, would recover the ball, although it would set up a 2nd and 24. So already behind the sticks, the ball just got knocked right out of Jimmy's hand. Who knows if part of that was attributed to the thumb, or maybe if it was just the fact that a big defensive lineman just smacked him right in the hand and he would have fumbled.
Yeah, I remember seeing that one. That one was like, yeah. Thank God he recovered it, though.
Yeah. And then Jimmy would end up taking a sack on the following play on a 3rd down with the Niners backed up. No, on 3rd down with us backed up, we'd try a run with Mitchell, but we'd lose a yard there too. So we lost yards on all 3 plays on that drive, and unfortunately would punt for the 2nd play of the game. Now, more notable about this, even than the fact that the Rams got a 31-yard return off of this, was the fact that Wishnowski, while trying to make the tackle, would take a hard shot. And I know we mentioned he's got a concussion. So after just coming off the COVID list, poor Aussie Mitch Wishnowsky, welcome to America. They just lit the man up, and like didn't know what the hell we were going to do because that was going to affect us not having a punter the rest of the game, but also in kicking because he also does our holding. So we'll get more into that for a little bit because he would not return in the game. So the return sets Stafford and company up nicely as he hits Higbee for the second touchdown of the game. So obviously Higbee wasn't that injured, and the Rams go up 17-0 with 6:55 left in the first quarter. I'm gonna put it up on the screen right now. Sean McVay getting in the end zone, celebrating with his team. I don't know how in the goddamn world this wasn't a penalty. Take a look at it here on the screen, everybody.
Oh man, what a dick.
Nobody getting flagged. But I mean, I don't know if that lit the proverbial fire under the ass. But I mean, after that, the game changed.
Yeah, maybe he shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, So Jimmy would start the Niners' third drive 3 for 3 with a big third down completion to Juwan Jennings for only the Niners' second first down to that point. And on the following play, Elijah Mitchell breaking his best run of the game so far for 13 yards. Next play, can't talk shit. On the next play, a promising drive came to an end after Jimmy would be hit as he threw, and the ball would be picked off by Taylor Rapp. Now, yeah, that was the first pick of the game that he would throw. There would be one more later in the game. We'll get into that a little bit later here as it comes up. But with 3:43 left in the half, the Rams take over, and they proceed to run most of the time off the clock. But facing a 3rd and 1 with 50 seconds left, this was a weird play call. You would expect them up 17-0 to just run out the clock with 50 seconds left.
Right.
But Stafford drops back. Now, that can be a good thing. Or against the Niners pass rush, it can be a very bad thing. And Bosa and Armstead would get back there and split a sack, which after 2 games of being quiet, I'm going to put it up on the screen, the Nick Bosa sack counter is back at 15.5 for the season. So he's still currently 4.5 off the Niners all-time season record, so unfortunately he wasn't going to get that. But still a really good season.
Yeah, still a great season.
Still a great season. Good enough to finish top 5 all-time in Niners history, for sure. So the Niners would take over with 38 seconds. And on the first play of the drive, Jimmy would thread the ball between 2 Rams players on to Ayuk for a gain of 19. And then he would set up throw to Hasty, which would get the Niners to midfield. And then they would have to take their final timeout with 20 seconds. So we're going to talk about Jimmy in the final couple minutes of the second half as well. But something about him, and I know we've mentioned this before, but in the final 2 minutes of games, he plays his best football sometimes, man. Like, he is just dialed in. I mean,
yeah.
Jimmy on the 2-minute drive is better than Jimmy the entire, 58 minutes of the game prior to that. So Jimmy ends up finding Ayuk for the second time on the drive, this time for 26 yards. So we're in range. Jimmy gets us up to the line, spikes the ball with 3 seconds left. And what are we going to do, bud? We don't have Wishnowsky, who's going to hold for the field goal attempt. Well, we got a guy that can do a lot of shit. Got a guy that's got a name that's very hard to say. It's got a lot of letters in it that are very strange.
He did a good job. I mean, he did the job.
Mr. Kyle Hughes-Check got the ball down. Good snap, good hold. Got the laces out, and with Wishnowsky injured, Robbie would drill the 42-yard field goal, which was perfect to cut the lead to 17-3 at the half. So we needed to get on the board and get something. We got the ball coming out of the second half, so it was crucial to get something there.
Yeah.
And it was concerning because coming into this game, McVay had some record where he was like 45-0 when leading at the half all time since he's been the Rams head coach. So you're like, okay, well, Jesus.
Well, that's not good.
But then you've also got Kyle Shanahan, who's like 5-0 the last 5 times he's played McVay. So something had to give here. It's like McVay's undefeated streak at the half versus Kyle's 5-0 streak recently, and Jimmy also being 5-0 against the Rams since being the Niners quarterback, which was a very interesting record because the Rams are a very good defense. And Jimmy's not that mobile, so you would expect him to struggle, but Jimmy, very good against, he struggles against the Seahawks, though, I will say. Anyway, Jimmy at the half, 9 out of 12, 90 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick. Stafford, a very impressive 15 of 16, 153 through the air, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Niners would start the second half with the ball, like we mentioned, facing an early 3rd and 3. Jimmy gets blasted by Aaron Donald as he releases the ball, but he finds Hasty in the flat to pick up a first down. So then, right after that, Jimmy hits a wide open Brandon Ayuk for a gain of 31. Then on the 3rd and 2, the Niners run what I like to refer to as our Debo special, where we line him up in the backfield and send Hasty in motion as a wide receiver. So Hasty goes out like he's a wide receiver, our running back. So you're like, okay, what the hell's going on? So Debo takes the ball and scores on a 16-yard rushing touchdown to make the game 17-10. As we mentioned a little bit earlier, the Rams weren't able to get a damn thing going on the run. Leading rusher coming in, Sony Michel, had 21 carries for 43 yards. Cam Akers, as we mentioned, playing his first football, 5 rushes for 3 yards. He also had 3 catches for 10 yards. So obviously, as they try to ease him back in, not a real productive game. But it's hard to run the ball against the Niners front. We always defend the run real well. Through the ground. And after 2 runs for a total of 3 yards, the Niners would blitz on the 3rd and 7 and almost get to Stafford, but the pressure by Dre Greenlaw caused an incompletion, and that would force the Rams to punt after a 3 and out on their first possession of the second half. So at that point, they were only up 7. The Niners come out on their next drive with 10 straight running plays. Does that sound familiar? Almost like what we did with that 18-play drive against them in the first Rams game. Remember that long opening drive that was the season long with all those run plays?
Like 11 minutes or something.
Yeah. So after 10 straight run plays, it's almost like that Rex Burkhead strategy. It's like, but then we mix it up and then we line Debo up in the backfield. He takes the handoff, and then he ends up rolling out to the right and finds a wide open Juwan Jennings for a touchdown for Debo. I mean, he's done everything else.
He's literally done everything after that. That was so cool to see that.
You might as well give him, to go with his 8 rushing touchdowns, his 6 receiving touchdowns, now 1 passing touchdown.
He's got it all.
Yeah, he really is like the gadget player that can do everything. I mean, he's the all everything. He's like a video game guy. And then so the extra point ties the game 17-17 with 1:46 to go in the 3rd quarter. And basically, a 14-point lead evaporates within the course of a quarter for the Rams. So on the first play of the Rams' following drive, DJ Jones getting back there. We talk about DJ Jones a lot for his disruptive play. He's usually making a big play in the backfield or tipping a ball. But he actually got back there for his 2nd sack of the season. Interior defensive linemen, unless you're Aaron Donald, don't get huge numbers of sacks. But it's really good to see him go back there and get that sack. I'm sure DJ Jones is going to earn himself a little bit of a payday this offseason. So that was a loss of 7. The second down throw was incomplete, and on a 3rd and 17, Stafford would throw deep, but it would be picked off by another returning player that we got back after 4 games, Emmanuel Mosley. So we definitely needed him, and he got a nice little return of 23 yards, but after review, it was ruled that he was down, although we'd still get the ball. Also notable when it comes to the cornerback position, Josh Norman, after getting benched last week against Houston, only playing special teams in this game. He was active, but it was Ambry Thomas and Emmanuel Mosley getting the start. And since K'Wan Williams was out at our nickel, he's our usual nickel guy, it was Dante Johnson playing the nickel. So interesting that Josh Norman was a healthy scratch, and I guess Kyle's just finally tired of all the PI calls.
Probably. I mean, geez.
Although he hasn't been the only one to get called for him, but he's definitely been the predominant culprit.
He's probably got the most, yeah.
I would say so. So, however, they couldn't take advantage, and they'd go 3-and-out of this opportunity. The Niners couldn't go down and get another touchdown. So we'd send out Robbie for his first punt of the day, and this would actually be at the start of the fourth quarter. Robbie's first punt would go 47 yards after a nice little roll and stop at the 18-yard line. So his first punt of the season, going inside the 20, getting credit for a punt inside 20. So
solid punt. Can't complain.
Good punts by Robbie. Good holds by Huschek. Guys stepping up when they needed to. Next man up. You love to see that in a game that you have to have. So after a great first half where he had one incompletion, Stafford started the second half 0 for 5, and that pick we mentioned. Bosa almost got another sack, but Stafford would throw the ball away with, while he was in Bosa's arms. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think they should have blown the whistle there and given Bosa the sack. But the Rams would pick up a 24 yards on a completion to Van Jefferson and pick up their first down of the second half. But the drive would stall after Fred Warner and Arden Key would split a sack, and the Niners, that was their fourth sack of the day. So we got good pressure on Stafford all day long. There was a meme that I saw that showed all the Rams gave up all this to beat this, and then it shows Von Miller, Odell, and Stafford, because they gave up all those first and the third pick to get Stafford, and then it just shows Jimmy. It's just
I've seen that.
Yeah. And Jimmy, now is 6-0 against the damn Rams. Something about it, you don't have to think Jimmy is the best quarterback in the league, because let's face it, he's not. But something about that man is magic against that Rams team. So, yards down the field on their next drive into the red zone. However, when targeting Kittle, the pass would be tipped into the air and picked off by Jalen Ramsey. On a really nice play by Ramsey, it was tipped by Ramsey, and Ramsey made a diving catch in the end zone.
Yeah, that one was really nice.
But then he ran it out to the 8 like an idiot. I don't know why he would have taken the touchback.
I know, right?
But yeah, so that was Jimmy's second pick of the game. Now, what wasn't mentioned was Jimmy took a shot in the head on that play that was never called by the referee, which obviously probably played a factor in him throwing the interception. Now, the Rams take over in a tie game 17-17 with 7:48 to play, facing a 3rd and 6 with Jimmy Ward in man coverage. Stafford, and Jimmy Ward's our best man coverage guy. The Niners mostly play zone defense almost all the time, but if we have to have a man coverage guy, Jimmy Ward's our best. So Stafford still connects with Cooper Kupp because he's ridiculous for a gain of 30. The Rams end up taking 5:13 off the clock of that 7:48. They killed a lot of clock and end up taking a lead on a 4-yard touchdown pass to who else? Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp once again, of course.
So the Rams going ahead 24-17 with 2:29 to go. Now the Niners end up having to punt after taking a third down. After Jimmy took a third down sack by Von Miller. So Von Miller, one of those big guys they traded for. So that paying some dividends. Although the Rams really didn't get much pressure all game. I feel like that might have been their only sack. No, actually, I'm sorry. They had 3 sacks, but we had 5. So we actually outproduced them.
That's a lot of sacks. I mean, 5 sacks in a game is solid.
Yeah, for sure. So with that, Jimmy taking the third down sack, it would force Robbie out for the second time. Now we were backed up, so we needed a good punt, and Robbie would drill a 42-yarder to force a Rams fair catch on at least their side of the 50. So that was huge. That was huge to at least not have them get another big return.
Yeah.
So the Rams would run 3 straight plays, and the Niners would use their 3 timeouts and forced another Rams punt. So San Francisco's taken over from their own 12, backed up with 1:27 left on the clock and no timeouts, and the playoffs on the line. But what did I say earlier? What is Jimmy at his best when there's 2 minutes or less on the clock?
It's like he learned that from Tom Brady.
That's what I was gonna say. I didn't want to say it, but I kind of wanted to say it. It's almost like that one factor he got from the GOAT watching
Yeah.
watching Tom Brady from the sidelines for 3 seasons. So the drive starts off great. 21-yard completion to Ayuk. He would complete the next pass to Jennings for 5 yards, so not much on that one, but still a positive play. One play later, Jimmy avoids a sack, extends the play, and throws a nice ball to a nice ball around a leaping Jalen Ramsey, who was going for another pick, and finds Debo for a gain of 43. It was a really nice throw by Jimmy. It was like probably his best throw all game. So that 43-yard catch and run takes the ball inside the red zone. Jimmy ends up spiking the clock with 34 seconds left. Keep in mind we don't have any timeouts. We get a bonus 5 yards when the Rams get called for an offside, which would move us down to the Rams 14. Jimmy's next pass was a little bit high to Debo in the end zone with 31 seconds left. And then on the following play, running out of time there, Jimmy would throw a 14-yard touchdown pass to Juwan Jennings, his second touchdown catch of the game and his 5th of the season. And we're always talking about Jennings.
Yeah, Juwan Jennings been going off lately.
Juwan Jennings
he's going to be back for sure next season.
Yeah. I mean, he's still only in the second year of his 4-year rookie deal, so we've still got him for a minimum 2 more years. He's going to be a Niner for a while, and I mean, I would re-sign that young man immediately, because as soon as you can, go ahead and get him a new contract. So at that point, we need the extra point, the all-important extra point. Obviously, Juice in there holding, and he's perfect with it. We tie the game up 24-24. So with 26 seconds left in regulation, in 2 timeouts, the Rams get a final chance to win it in regulation. So with 21 seconds to play, Eric Armstead gets back there for his first sack of the day. Eric Armstead would get back there on what was his best game of the year, and he would get, that would be the Niners, as we mentioned, 5th sack of the season. Armstead, though, went off. Armstead came in with 2.5 sacks, and he had 2.5 sacks in this game alone. So he matched what he had all season in this game. So with in a game where you really had to have it, a lot of players definitely stepped up, and that was huge. It was great to see the whole team when we really needed to win. And as you could tell, because I'm sure they were watching the scoreboard of the Falcons game, and as they could see that the Falcons weren't going to beat the Saints, they're like, okay, well, we really need to handle business here. So Armstead gets the sack, and at that point the Rams just decide to, let the clock run out and go to OT. So we thank God we got the overtime, coin toss in our favor. We got heads, and we start with the ball. First play of the drive, Jimmy throws it a little bit behind Debo. Was just a little bit behind him, just barely missed. On the next play, though, we would pick up 13 on a run for a first down on a play where Kittle made an exceptional block. A lot of players really stepping up big, as we mentioned. On a 3rd and 6, Jimmy would find, guess who? Juwan Jennings.
Juwan Jennings, once again.
34 yards to take the ball down into Niners field goal range. Now, Juwan Jennings would end up converting another 3rd and 3, and I'll give you his final numbers in a second, but that keeps the Niners in possession. So, as you know, the overtime period is 10 minutes long. So the Niners ended up running over 7 minutes off the overtime period clock, and end up settling for a 24-yard Robbie Gould field goal with 2:45 left to play, and the Rams having to use their 2 timeouts that they got in overtime. So at that point, we're ahead 27-24. Now, you would love to have gotten a touchdown there, but obviously you've got to take the points. A touchdown would have obviously sealed the game. But as per NFL, overtime rules, which I love a lot less when it's my team, in the overtime. But the Rams would get the opportunity, and I'll just, like I said, I was going to give you his numbers. Juwan Jennings, 6 catches, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. So he had a career best game, and let me just go over this real quick. Okay, so the Rams had their chance to answer. Stafford would throw incomplete passes on 1st and 2nd down. So after really having 1 incomplete pass the entire first quarter, Stafford unraveled. And on a 3rd down, however, Emmanuel Mosley would be called for defensive pass interference.
Mm.
And that would be our 20th of the season. So even with, like I said, even with Josh Norman not in there, we still get called for him. Although that was our
Yeah.
first in the game late in the fourth quarter. So with Stafford looking for Cooper Kupp, that would have been a first down if they would have obviously picked it up.
Yeah.
So the clock goes down to the 2-minute warning, and the Rams are driving. And first play after the warning, Stafford takes a shot deep for Odell. And he was trying to pick on Ambry Thomas. We always talk about poor Ambry getting burned, and he's out there, he's learning, he's growing every week. And this was really his I think coming out party and his moment,
Absolutely.
So ball was a little bit underthrown. He made a perfect play on it and ended up making the game-sealing interception, which would give the Niners the 27-24 win and get us into the playoffs, where we will have to now defeat the number one offense in the NFL, the Dallas Cowboys, which is going to be a hell of a game. I'm looking forward to it. A little bit nervous because obviously the Cowboys present so many challenges. Although their run game hasn't been so much, I'm more concerned about their ability to take advantage of us through the air.
Exactly.
With
Dak
our secondary,
and Michael Gallup, and
Yeah.
I mean Ezekiel Elliott, he's a good running back too. I mean, they might get something on the ground too, but the Niners are good at defending the run.
Yeah, I imagine Dak's probably going to take a couple shots deep for Gallup or CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper, probably trying to get a DPI call or two, since we have 20 of them on the damn season. But yeah, just to go through the final Niners numbers for that game. Jimmy, after a slow and rough start, finishing the game admirably. Jimmy, gutsy as hell. Like, if you're going to give somebody the game ball, his last 2 drives of that game, 8 out of 9, with 1 touchdown, no picks. So, like, when the game mattered, like I said, Jimmy was on it. But his final numbers, 23 of 32, 316 yards, his 5th 300-yard game of the season. 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Elijah Mitchell, leading rusher, 21 carries, 85 yards. Debo had 8 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown. Ayuk was our leading receiver with his first 100-yard game of the season. He had 6 catches for 107 yards. Debo had 95 on 4 catches to go with his 45 on the ground and rushing touchdowns, so that's about 150 total. Juwan Jennings, as we mentioned, 6 catches, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is the disappointing one. Kittle only 5 catches for 10 yards. I saw how they were throwing to him. It was a lot of screens and stuff where he was getting tackled for a loss or not much. But that's
always sad to see.
Yeah. So Kittle, who came in needing 100 yards to get to 1,000, obviously finishing the regular season with 910 receiving yards. He did miss 3 regular season games. You like to think that if he didn't miss those games, he would have for sure.
He would have for sure. That's not even a question.
Yeah, absolutely, at the pace he was going. Debo finishing obviously well over 1,000 yards on the season. His final numbers here: 1,405 receiving yards on 77 catches, 6 receiving touchdowns, 59 carries for 365 rushing yards, a 6.2 yard carry per carry average, and 8 rushing touchdowns, also 1 24-yard passing touchdown. And Jimmy on the season had over 3,000 yards as well, 20 touchdowns, 12 picks, which is funny because Heineke also had 20 touchdowns and 15 picks. So both of them finishing with 20 touchdowns.
Interesting.
Jimmy had 3,800 yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 picks. So on 15 starts. So mostly healthy season. He only missed the 2 games. And then the other thing I was just going to mention was Elijah Mitchell. Disappointing. If he would have played in any more games, just even one more game, he finished the season with 963 receiving yards. I'm sorry, 963 rushing yards. So 37 short of 1,000. So that would have given us what you guys had. And shockingly, he would have been the first running back to finish in under Kyle Shanahan with 1,000 yards, which sounds shocking. You'd be surprised by that. But normally we just feed so many different backs. It's like last year, Jeff Wilson led the team with 600 yards. But, we give a little to Raheem, we give a little to Jeff Wilson, some was going to Tevin Coleman. But yeah, Elijah Mitchell had a shot at the first 1,000-yard season, and unfortunately, coming up just short. So we could have done what the Skins had if we could have picked up, like I said, one more game. He only played in 11 games, so he missed 6 due to injury. So maybe next year, but we've got a promising young player in him. So
yeah, definitely.
Hoping he runs for like 200 yards on that Dallas D, and Micah Parsons doesn't kill us too much.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Dallas
we'll
one and
definitely
done.
cover that game.
Hashtag Dallas one and done.
Hopefully. Absolutely, one and done.
Yeah, join us next week as we will recap all the playoff games, but especially the Niners and the Cowboys wildcard weekend playoff game. So join us next week. Go Niners. Let's get that done.
Definitely. Hell yeah.
And that's going to do it this week on the Extra Point Show. Thank you so much for joining us as always. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And subscribe for more content. And
yeah, absolutely. And we will see you next week to cover the playoffs.
We got playoff football, baby. It's a great time.
Absolutely. Go Niners in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Go Niners, and have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night.